Hello, collective listeners. On today's episode of the Collective, we have a very good friend of mine. And as I referenced in the podcast, a lot of people in strength and conditioning probably know him. Tyler Watson, head strength and conditioning coach over with Butler men's basketball, does a fantastic job. He has some really good strengths, things I really think that were valuable for us to discuss in the podcast. Things like how to approach accountability with your athletes, what it looks like with the NIL landscape now, basketball, and then how to develop your network. Because, like I said, he knows almost everybody within strength and conditioning. Everybody knows him. So I thought it'd be fantastic to have him on and kind of drop some knowledge and give us a few hints on those topics in specific. I hope you enjoy. What's going on, collective listeners? On today's episode of the Collective, we have a very good friend of mine, Ty Watson. I'm sure almost every strength coach here knows Ty. Somehow, every time I bring up Ty, every single person knows him, tells me how much they love him. So I thought he'd be a fantastic guest for the podcast. Thanks for coming on, Ty.
Hey man, glad to be on here. Couldn't be more excited to share a platform than other than with Connor Agnew. Can't wait.
There might be a little sarcasm in that
No,
voice, but that's all
definitely
right.
not.
We'll keep rolling. All right, Ty. So, kind of break us down your history in strength and conditioning. What got you into strength and conditioning, and where you're at now?
Yeah. So coming out of high school, went to play college football at Middle Tennessee State. Spent a year there. Transferred to Chattanooga, which was my hometown. Man, just depending on how long you want this story to go, I failed out of school. I got hurt and failed out of school. I was a engineering major, and man, like what a mistake that was. And so ended up going to community college, done playing football, obviously. And I'll never forget, I was 286 pounds. And my parents were so upset with me. My dad's like, just go to the military. And I was like, all right. So I go to the naval recruitment offices, and they were like, we'd love to have you, but you're too big. And so they were like, yeah, just go lose some weight, get in shape, and come back and see us. So I started losing weight, running and lifting a little bit, and started working at a high school in my hometown, actually my rival high school, and kind of just fell in love with strength and conditioning. Got me an internship at Southern Miss football with Paul Jackson, who was incredible to learn under. After that, did internships at Vandy football with Dwight Galt, the Buffalo Bills, and then when I graduated, I went to Clemson, and I had volleyball and track at Clemson. Was there for a brief time, maybe 6-7 months. Went to Tennessee State, got involved with basketball. So that was 2015. So that's my first time in college basketball, and then went to Elon for 2.5 years, where I had basketball and volleyball. Was overseeing some of the Olympic sports there, and then Missouri State for a year with men's basketball, women's basketball. The women's basketball coach got the job at Tennessee, took me home to the University of Tennessee where I met you, was there for 2 years. And then I had a call from St. John's men's basketball. And it was, man, it's one of those things for me. Like I've never really lived in a big city. It was, kind of just the lights, the enamored, of just the way the city operates. And I was like, you know what, let's give it a go. So moved to New York for a year, was there. And then boom, Thad Matta gets a job at Butler and calls me, and I'll never forget sitting in traffic in New York City for an hour and a half. And I was like, I got all the time in the world to talk, coach. I mean, so you let me know how you want this interview to go. So talked with him for an hour and a half, and then 2 days later accepted the job. And I've been here since May of 2022. So coming up on year 2.
Man, that's incredible, and the amount of locations that you've been. I mean, I think kind of shows how you know everybody. But again, at every conference, I feel like you're kind of the centerpiece. Everybody kind of comes up to old Ty Watson there, man. So, well, I got a couple questions. The first one for you is, what was it like going back to Tennessee? I know you've been a big Vol fan for a long time. What was it like to be able to coach in Thompson Bowling and kind of experience that environment?
Yeah, that was once in a lifetime. It's always been a dream spot of mine. And again, it's another funny conversation of talking to the head coaches. I was at Missouri State probably 3 weeks or so, maybe even a month, after Kelly Harper had taken that job, and she calls randomly one day and was like, I was like, Coach, what are you doing? And she goes, oh, I'm just sitting here in God's country. She played there, whatever. And I was like, man, I wish I was there. She goes, that's funny. I'm calling to offer you this job. And so, man, it was a overwhelming sense of emotion. I didn't never expected to make that jump, and just being close to family. But yeah, like you said, I mean, cut me and I would bleed orange. For other than Butler. I mean, or wherever my current university is. But I was always a huge Tennessee fan. So being around all those programs, football, men's basketball, things like that, it was really a dream come true. To be honest with you.
It is so cool. That environment is incredible. And going to the games. I was lucky enough to be on the field at Neyland for a lot of those games, and it was, I mean, awesome. And I'll never forget just us talking about the games, and I'm figuring out, all right, we're kind of the same type of guy when we were talking about, the environment around the game as well too. And the last question about Tennessee is, obviously working with women's basketball there. Pat Summitt is probably the most well-known women's coach of all time. What was that environment like? And especially, I mean, to even have that massive Pat Summitt statue right across from the arena. What did that kind of contribute to the program?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and I don't know what sport has a greater just pioneer than Pat Summitt was for women's basketball. The legacy she left is still, very large and still, ongoing. And like you said, the statue's right there. The road's named after. The locker room has, Pat's dozens. Like the rules we follow, and it played a big role in helping us turn that program around. It kind of gotten away from I don't want to say the glory days, but when we got there, it was in a bad spot, and we had to do a lot of things to right the ship, and we just started by going back to what she did. And Kelly was one of her point guards, 3-time national champion. So it was one of those things where Kelly was like, I'm not Pat, but at the same time, we can still follow some of these same principles and ideologies that she said and laid the foundation, long ago.
And we actually have the definite dozen in our locker room here too, because our women's head coach was an assistant coach for Pat. One of the years they won the national
Wow.
championship. So that, I mean, like you say, as a pioneer of women's basketball, she's ever present in almost every facet of women's
One thousand
basketball.
percent.
Uh, and it's just a great environment. So, we've talked about this personally, but I'm curious too. A full year into Butler now, what was it like going from school to school within conference? How's that experience been?
Yeah.
Was it awkward at all when you played St. John's? What was that
No,
like?
I don't think there was any love lost or any ill will once when I left. I made a lot of moves as we've talked about. Every move I've made has been very calculated. And now again, this is a spot that it's funny is Butler was actually my very first college football offer, which they were non. I got offers like maybe a sophomore year, or was like they were in or they were not in they were non-scholarship football, and so it was my very
Yeah.
first one, and I was like, man, that'd be weird to kind of go there because it was a school that I always thought about, and my freshman year, I think. Freshman year was the first year they went to the national championship. But yeah, so as far as going from conference to conference, end to in conference, transfer almost.
Yeah.
No love lost. I mean, I still talk to all those guys at St. John's. The ops there is still one of my really, really good friends. The players I still talk to throughout the season. And it was funny because we played up there first. So in New York first, and I'll never forget, there was probably, 12 minutes left to go in the first half, and they're coming out of a timeout, and that is sideline out of bounds, and drew up this play, threw it to the elbow, and then just hook pass over the top for a lob dunk. And their starting center, Joel Soriano, stares the ball down like he always does when he dunks it. And then just looks at our bench and was like, yeah, Ty, like screaming at me mid-game, pointing at me. I was like, God. So, no, it was cool, and like I said, I still talk to those coaches that were there with us at St. John's. And, now being here, it's so cool that I'm still in, what I consider the best basketball conference in the country.
I mean, well, I grew up watching. I mean, I'm from Syracuse, so I
Yeah.
grew up watching Big East basketball. All those games at Madison Square Garden, the 6 overtime UConn game with Syracuse. I mean, it's the most storied conference. So I always like having that connection with you because I can kind of, via a
Yeah.
friend, get to experience Big East basketball just
Yeah,
a
no
little bit.
doubt.
Unfortunately, they're in the ACC now, but who cares about the
Yeah.
ACC? It's SEC and Big East football. So, awesome. So, there's a couple things, and you have a lot of strengths that I really think you can help other coaches who are listening to this podcast kind of understand. The first one, I think, is your ability as a coach, and it just from my experience and seeing it, you develop these amazing relationships with your athletes. They constantly come back and always check in with you, and they know that you love them and that you care for them. But I've also never seen somebody hold their athletes as accountable to that standard as well too. So how do you do that? What is that balance like? Because again, at the highest level, those athletes always come back and they love you to death. But then you also hold them extremely accountable. I mean, it gets crazy out there. So kind of talk to me about that process, what that looks like.
Man, it's first of all, I think I may have picked this up from my family as a kid, but one thing that I live by and I definitely coach by is that I truly believe that discipline is one of the greatest forms of love. Um, and if any kind of leader position or a coach, like if I'm willing to accept certain behaviors that aren't our standard, I'm doing everyone, the player, our staff, everyone a disservice. So there has to be a level of accountability, and there's no wavering from that. It is what it is. It's very black and white. I don't see gray areas when it comes to accountability. If it's 10 push-ups, it's 10 push-ups. There's not 9, there's not 11. I don't care. Just do 10. Then as far as the relationship piece goes, I mean, that's what this business is, man. Like that is, we're in a service industry. I mean, I'm here to serve these kids, and I don't think I play favorites. I don't think even if the kid that comes in extra, like I'm not like extra with him. Like I mean, I'm just trying to get us all in the same direction here. But really, just starts with just communicating and talking to these dudes. Like I talk to these dudes every day, and I mean, it's not just like Monday through Friday. It's not just, Saturdays and like it's every single day. You have to. Because if, I operate on, as far as ability goes, the best ability for me is availability. Like these guys call me for everything. I'm taking a kid a mattress today. Like, I mean, just whatever I can do to help them, and I know don't get me wrong, there's a work-life balance and things like that. But at the end of the day, if they know that you're there, like they will come. What's the field of dreams? If you build it, they will come. Like I'm constantly trying to build this thing, like, I mean, I'll do whatever I want, whatever I can for these guys and whatever they need, and, it's as simple as like, let's go grab lunch. It's simple as come down and let's, work on your body. Let's do some mobility work and, stretch you out, whatever we need to do. It's, or it's, maybe it's hey, it's Saturday. Let's go play 18 holes of golf. A transfer sophomore point guard from St. Francis, PA likes to play golf. Hey, let's go hit some. Like it's things like that. Just trying to constantly just build the rapport and the relationship with these guys. Because once you have that set, everything else falls into place. I mean, let's be honest, man. Like what we do is pretty easy. Like we know the sets and reps and percentages and ranges and all the things we need to do. Like, but if you don't have the relationship with these people, athletes, male, female, whatever, none of it works. But if you have that to start and it's really strong, everything else falls into place. My guys don't want to miss reps. Like they don't want to and
Mm.
it's a man. It just goes back to our relationship. They don't want to let me down. They want to let their teammates down. And when you can do it like that, man, that's how it works. That's how you get the ball rolling in the direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I think there's so many good points in what you just said. And ultimately, I think it comes down to a lot about what multiple coaches say, and what's been a common theme of what I know from other strength coaches, that there's a deep level of care first. I care about you as a human being, and through that deep level of care, you come here, you ask us to coach you. You can't accept these behaviors, right? Because ultimately, that means I'm letting you get away with something. If I let you come in and be late, and you go to your job later, and you think you can be late in your job, like you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
So it's all about this. I care about
Mhm.
you, so I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to hold you to a certain standard, because I also know you're better than what you're giving me right now.
Right.
Because I know there's a higher potential, and that's so valuable. But so you're saying it's the stuff outside of the
Oh,
weight
one
room
thousand
too,
percent.
bonding with these guys outside of here. I think it is interesting though, because especially in college basketball, you and I both know how it goes. It's endless, endless hours
Yeah.
throughout the day. And I mean, even with my situation, you end up kind of having these split out days where I've got women's golf at 6 a.m. and then we've got practice at 5 p.m. for the guys. How do you find that work life balance? How do you maintain that so you don't reach that burnout point?
Yeah. It's. I talked to someone the other day. I said, um, I like being here. I like being in the gym. Um, you hear chatter all the time of, you got to have balance this, balance that. You don't want to be here all day and night. Like, I don't mind it. Like from my dad was a coach, and so since I was a kid, I've been a gym rat. I like being around, and so and I honestly, I think that's what I told my friend the other day. I said if I get to the point where I don't like being around, maybe that's a sign. But I love being around, so it doesn't hurt, my balance of life. And so the other thing is like, dude, I go golfing, but I might just take one of the guys with me. Like,
Mm.
I'll go have dinner with us people on our staff. Like, I like being. I'm very social. I'm very, and as you probably heard and you alluded to, everyone seems to kind of know me. I do have those butterfly tendencies of as being super social. I like being out and about. I'm severely ADD, ADHD. So it's like I need a stimulant. I need something. Sitting at home, idle time is devil's playground, right? Or idle hands.
Oh
So I,
yeah.
I like doing stuff. I like being out and about. So this just being at work for me was where I get my joy. So I'm good with it. I don't believe, or at least for me, I don't believe in the whole burnout thing.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, it cracks me up because I remember when we were at Tennessee, we'd be at work the same hours, and that's where we would kind of bond. And I remember you'd always be like, "All right, let's go get a drink
Yeah,
or something." I'm like, "I'm good," because I'm the most introverted person. Like when work is done, I want to go home. I don't want to hear from
yeah.
anybody. Then we obviously started hanging out a little bit more, but it just cracks me up. So the social piece was another strength that I have.
Hmm.
Obviously, coaches always talk about networking, but I feel like you take it really to the next level. You and I talk on the phone almost every day. And I know I'm not the only coach that's on that
Yeah,
list.
yeah,
So, what are your tips for networking? Kind of how do you go about that process? Like, if somebody is struggling in that area, what would you
yeah.
say to them?
Man, it's everything. Like I said, this is a service industry. It's a people industry. Without the people, this thing doesn't operate. For me, I think I'm right now in a little bit of a different stage of my career, where I still don't get me wrong. I still have plenty of strength coaches I talk to daily. Because again, that's we both share the same passions and whatever else. I mean, I do a lot of networking with coaches, like as sport coaches, so basketball coaches. That's helped me a ton. I went to my first Final Four in 2018 in Minneapolis, and while I was there, I met a guy named Kevin Kuick, who is now the head coach at West Point. Um, he's the reason I'm basically a Butler. He's like, hey, I know a guy that works this place, that works at St. John's, knows the league, recommends me to Thad Matta, and boom, like so as far as the networking goes, a lot of times, at least in my case, like the strength coach isn't the one hiring me, So I think you also got to be humble enough to kind of step outside the box and talk to sport coaches and get to know them and build relationships with them because a lot of times, I mean, especially, the most jobs people want, like you're with the sport coach. Um, that's just how it works.
No, absolutely. I mean, my interviews have always been with the head coach first, every single time. It's never the Olympic
Yeah.
director calls me first. It's always the head coach. And where do you see those opportunities the most? Obviously you've got the Final Four, but how do you find those opportunities more so that you can really create those connections?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the Final Four is a great spot because everyone's kind of in there together. Shoot, it's every single basketball coach in the country. And then, again, just building relationships with my staff, and the assistant coaches we have here, the video guys we have here. Um, it starts with that. It starts with be where you're at and build where you're at and having relationships with these guys. Like I know Mike Pegues, one of our assistant coaches, like, you know, me and him again, another guy, just so I work with him, but we talk on the phone every night, about something. Who knows? And so I know that one day down the line, what if Mike gets another opportunity to be a head coach? Like not only will he call me and be like, hey, come with me, but he also be like, hey, I need a strength coach. Who do you got? And so building that level of trust with these coaches that you're around first, and then branching out from there. And again, also it's one of those things that I'm in a unique situation where I have moved around quite a bit, that I have got to meet so many great coaches. I mean, those coaches in Missouri State, I talk to them daily, probably. I talk to the head coach there once a month. I talk to the associate head coach every day. So building those relationships, like that's what's going to help me down the road. And that's kind of what has led to me making the moves that I've made is by those relationships. The head coach of Missouri State was the head coach of Tennessee State, and when he got that job, I was the first person he called. So and
Yep.
that's how you have to network and market yourself is by first being where you're at and making and building relationships with people you work with, and then their trees are much more extended than mine. So it all just kind of flows like that.
No, absolutely. And I mean, like, so for me, with going to Texas Tech, you talk about, well, if this assistant coach leaves and gets a head coaching job, he may not even take me, but I can help out one of my buddies
Yeah,
by linking them up to this job.
yeah,
I'll never forget. We all know Greg
hmm
Adamson, and that's the boom
yeah,
guy, as most people
yeah,
know. But Greg got called for the job at Texas Tech,
hmm
and they offered it to him,
hmm
and they asked him to go out there, and then he said, "Hey, look, I really love the situation I'm at," and they said, "If you want the younger version of me." I've got them right here.
yeah,
And then that's how I got connected through there. So
right,
I agree. The trees branch out, and it's so important to actually maintain these relationships as well, too. I think that's a lot of things that like coaches struggle with.
hmm
And I think it gets frustrating is because you end up calling somebody, like if I wanted to call Dan Worth from Tennessee,
yep,
and the only things I ever ask him is like, hey, do you know anybody at this place so I can get this job? Like those relationships break down. And I think you do a really good job of checking in every day. And
yeah,
it's always, or every week, every month, like it is, asking about that person as a human
right.
being because you actually care about them as a human
Right.
being.
Yeah. No. And one thing I guess you asked for tips. Like I do have a call log of like who, like every month I write out like I need to call X, Y, and Z this month. And that way I don't get overwhelmed with it. I don't want to get myself like, hey, this week call so and so. Just get it done this month. If it's the 31st of the month, okay, I got to call all three. But like but it's right there in front of me to see. So and like again, like I go back and I guess it was Wednesday or Tuesday, I don't remember, but got a phone call from a assistant coach at Campbell. We worked together at Elon in 2016. Looking for a strength coach. Like again, so like he's another guy that like every 2-3 months give Monty a shout. Um, but no, like the tip is like write it down. And see who you need to
Yep.
connect with. It's not hard. You just gotta do it. And again, it's easy for me because I like talking to people. Again, I call you every day or whatever it may be. Like a lot of times it's probably complaining about something. But like at least you're
Yep.
there for me. To hear me complain. Let's trade stories here.
Oh, yeah. It goes both ways, big time.
No doubt.
Because I think our favorite phrase is, "I got one for you." All
I
right,
got one for you. Yeah, no doubt.
I got one for you, and then we'll go from there. 100%.
For sure.
Oh no, uh, and I think one thing that when you do talk about your experiences and everywhere you've been in college basketball for a long time. So one thing we haven't really touched on this podcast so far is NIL,
Mm,
and I think I haven't really touched on it because it's really mostly prevalent for me in football and basketball. Those are the two sports I see the biggest
mhm.
differences. How what's the difference you've seen pre NIL to post NIL, and then what are some of the challenges that kind of come with it now that it's prevalent throughout the NCAA?
Yeah. It's man, as far as I can only speak on what I've experienced so far. When NIL was so I guess its first year, I was at St. John's, and it was still we didn't really have it all figured out yet. I don't think anyone really truly did. Now that we're 3 years into it, or going on year three, maybe, you know, I think the biggest thing is keeping your guys close to the vest in a sense of like, you know, rule number one is a man, we're not going to talk finances. We're not going to like, this is your money. Like there's no need to be showing whatever you're making, whatever, teaching them and helping them understand that, yes, your name, image, and likeness is um, valuable, and we want you to use it wisely. But also it's another teaching point of you have to carry yourself a certain way, because now people are paying you, companies, organizations are paying you, to represent them. So again, now you're just expanding your brand, and you're making yourself, or putting yourself more so in a public eye. And so you can't act certain ways, you can't do certain things, and that just is what it is. So being able to teach our guys how to maneuver and operate like adults, and again, just be model citizens is a good point for us. Now the disadvantages of NIL. I think you can't have that kind of corruption of like, oh, so and so's making this, so and so's making X amount of dollars. I'm only making this. That can probably create some divide in the locker room, and that is especially in a sport like basketball. That's the last thing you want because it's not a big group. It's 13 dudes. Football may be different. I can't speak on it. I don't work with football, but with basketball, you know everybody, and like you're always together, and that's the challenge of it all is making sure your guys are number one, they know what they're getting, they know when they're getting it, and they know how they're getting it, and how to continue and uphold and fulfill their contracts that they need to do. So that's what I've seen.
You know, and what you go back to about being the model citizen, that goes back to the accountability
Yeah,
piece we started off
yeah,
with. I mean, I'm going to teach you how to maintain these business relationships and maintain these
right,
deals. And it's so interesting because our men's head coach will always bring up, like, anytime we have a public event or anything, he said, you never know when an NIL deal is going to walk through the door.
1,000%.
You could, somebody's grandkid could come up and hug you on the leg. And if you freak out and you're like, hey, get off me,
Hmm.
like that could be one of the biggest donors' grandkids. You never know,
Yeah,
and so it does make a massive difference. But when you talk about the locker room, I have seen it divide locker rooms as well
yeah,
too. And there's this big trend where everybody, like, wants to value themselves at the utmost
hmm,
level, right? And I think some people can kind of go too far with that and not be realistic about what they bring to the table,
hmm,
right? And so all of a sudden they see, one of the best scorers, one of the best facilitators on the team making this amount, and then their stats may not be the same. They may not be the kind of practice guy that you're looking for, and they're saying, "Hey, I want to be at that exact same level," and then that
hmm.
really creates the divide too, because it's almost unrealistic about what some people can expect from the NIL, and that's, I mean, certainly a
Yeah.
challenge. Have you?
No,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
So I mean, but also, at the end of the day, like it's also, I mean, it's funny because nothing, the game really never changes in the sense of it's still all about recruiting. You got to recruit good people too, and I think that
Oh yeah.
that says a lot about it. Just, I mean, if you have good people, the chances of your locker room getting a divide because of X amount of dollars is probably very rare. Just chances are slim. So when it all comes down to it, if you're recruiting the players that you need and want to build around, you're probably going to be okay. But you still have the touching and teaching moments and touch points you want to go over with these guys or women whenever those opportunities do come up. And and again, it's just an opportunity for them to build their brand um, and again just provide them opportunities to better help them for success.
Oh yeah, and I mean, exactly what you said. We had somebody transfer over from Butler over here to
Yeah,
App State. The only question I ever asked you was, "How
yeah,
is he?" And then I mean, you told me the truth. Awesome guy, leader, somebody you want within the weight
yeah,
room, and I mean that's 100% shown
yeah.
through. I mean, and that's the
Yeah,
biggest thing.
we don't have to name his name just for privacy reasons here, but he is a kid that um, we didn't our first year we didn't win a lot of games, but he's a kid that I was okay losing with because he always did the right thing,
Mm.
you know, and
Oh, it's so
and
important.
it is like
Yeah.
you gotta if you want to everyone wants to win, but you gotta be okay with losing with the guys you got, and he was one of those because he did all the right things.
That speaks volumes. I mean, seriously, because when things don't go your way, I think that's when your true character
Yeah,
comes out.
no doubt.
100% of the time. I mean, because you know me, things don't go my way, I start screaming and crying like a
Yeah,
baby. So
calling me.
my
Yeah,
true character shining through. Exactly, and say, "Hey, I got one
right,
for you."
exactly.
Right? Okay, so just in the general sense, can you kind of talk me through what are the biggest points of your program? Not even necessarily from a programming standpoint or periodization standpoint. What are the biggest things that you really emphasize when guys come to your weight room at Butler?
Yeah, first thing I'm going to say is movement and the quality of movement. I think that's probably the easy answer for everyone. Now that might be most important, but at the same time, we got to work. What's up, baby? I'll be here for a while. You're gonna do it? Oh, okay, okay, okay. Hit me. Call me if you need anything. Okay, all right. There it is. You'll have to edit that
Okay.
part out, I guess. But
We may even leave it
it,
in just to show you how the players always
yeah,
come in.
all the time.
Speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So movement, I guess, is the easy answer. But at the end of the day, me and you have talked about this quite extensively. That the way the college landscape is now is we don't get 4 years to build these athletes anymore.
Mm.
A lot of times it might just be a 2 year loaner. Maybe it's 2 years on the back end. Maybe it's a guy that has junior and redshirt year to play or grad year to play, whatever it may be. Um, So is he strong? Okay, if he's strong, does he move well? And then you can kind of flip those around. Like, what if he doesn't move well, but he is strong? Okay, let's work on getting him moving better, and kind of maintain his strength levels. Well, what if he moves really well but isn't strong? Okay, we got to get him stronger, but then same thing for freshmen, same thing with these first year students. Like, man, like I can't like. Here's one for you as far as an interview question I got once. Um, a coach asked me, "Hey, we got 10 guys. This is back when football days. We got 10 freshmen coming in that are probably going to play a significant amount. Whether it be backup, starter, a lot of special teams, whatever. Then we have another 20 and then another 15, whatever that might not play much. How do you go about training those dudes in the summer when they get here? The 10 that are going to play compared to the 15 that maybe not won't play as much. I said, give me 1 week to make sure their technique and their movement is sound. They know what we expect, and then you got to throw them to the wolves, because and that at the
Absolutely.
time it was I was at Vanderbilt, and it was like the SEC ain't no joke. They ended up winning 10 games that year, which Vandy hasn't done in a while. But like you got to train, you got to like work, you got to strain. It's not just let's do yoga, every, which is great, by the way. We do it in our program, but like, we can't just do mobility work, 3 out of the 7 days, like maybe once or twice. And if you need extra, you got to come in extra. Like, and that's the beautiful thing about our program and the culture we set. Like on Saturdays from 10 to 12, optional, voluntary, everybody's here. Like, and when they come in, it's not, hey, you're doing this today. What do you want to do today? And
Mm,
if you want to just get huge arms, massive bicep pumps, let's do it. If you want to go through mobility
yep.
and just stretch and do some core work and maybe some light activation work, let's do that. If you got to run, you might need to run. Like you've got to lose some weight. Might have to get on the treadmill a little bit. But at the end of the day, like those are about them, and that's another way you build relationships is by letting them know that, like I got news for you. You and I are strength coaches. I don't know so and so in that locker room's body better than he does. I don't. Like they know their bodies. And it's just now it's about helping them understand that what they think is the limit might not be. Or what they think or when they think they're, you know, going really hard, it might not be. Or maybe they think that, I feel really good today, but it's not showing on the velocity reader. Well, did you sleep? Did you eat? Are you hydrated? Whatever it may be. Like so now it's about just educating them. But at the end of the day, like we got to do what's best for them. So we operate on a system now that it is the movement has to be, you know, reasonable. But at the end of the day, we have to put ourselves under the bar or on a trap bar. We have to lift something heavy. We have to build resiliency. We have to be durable. This is a brutal league. Like if you know Big East basketball, it is arguably, if not the most physical league in all of college basketball. I mean, it is. I mean, it's a heavyweight fight every single night, and so durability and resiliency are huge while maintaining structural integrity and ability to move through multiple planes. And again, we attack that with weights. Like one thing I learned at Tennessee from Garrett was, your sphere of strength. Like if you step outside your framework, how far are we stepping out? But what is our ability to get back into that position that we started, and how well can we load it? So loading our sphere of strength and getting our body moving in multiple planes is something that we really harp on here. We do a lot of it. So, and the thing is, you can't do that without mobility. So we have a plan to make sure our movement is assessed properly and what we expect them to be able to do, and then we load those different planes in various ways as much as we can. To be honest with you.
No, and that's so valuable. And what you spoke of earlier, it's always movement. Make sure they have the technique down, and then we're grinding after
Yeah.
that. That's what the piece is going to look like. And it's so funny because I remember my first couple years. I was like, "Hey, our coach thinks our workouts are too easy."
Hmm.
And then you sat down and you said, "All right, well, give me the program." And I listed it out to you, and you were like, "Yeah, that's like a quarter of one of our
Yeah,
days." And then you're like, "That's not tough
yeah,
enough." And then I fought back with you a little bit, and then I was like, "You know what? Fine, I'll just try it out what Ty's doing." And my program just took off
yeah.
from there. There's that aspect of working hard, making sure everything's within reason and within that sphere of strength, like you're saying, and then pushing the limits from there, and pushing the boundaries so that they can actually improve.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like there's you can definitely overdo it. But I
Oh yeah,
think that, a lot of um, a lot of programs are doing just barely enough to elicit adaptation, and
the
yeah,
minimal effective
minimal
dose.
effective
Yeah,
dose, and if I went back to, doing microdosing and lifting every day, maybe I'd alter some things I do, but we don't operate like that, and so the human body, and especially these athletes, are way more resilient than we give them credit for. Now, when I say all this, and then we train hard, but there's going to be times where I ease up on them. Like, I still have deload weeks. I still I'll
yep,
use that. And we have so many modalities now of recovery anyway. Like, we're gonna be okay as long as our guys are eating right, sleeping well, hydrating. Use all the other modalities you want. Get in the Normatec boots, do your hot cold contrast, whatever. But um, I think we've lost sight a little bit of how hard we can train these guys and girls. I mean, it's one of those. Um, I don't know if you heard that in the background. Uh, we have a Canadian on our team. And Canada's playing Brazil right now. Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, there
So
you go. Makes sense.
yeah, so I think we just lost sight a little bit of how hard we can actually train these athletes and their ability to adapt and recover at rates that you know myself can't right now. But we can definitely. They
Yep.
definitely can.
And that's so funny too because I do think strength coaches kind of apply their own like I mean I'm 26 now I have to warm up a little bit like I used to be able to just go right into it and I have to warm up a little bit so now my warm ups have gotten a little more
Sure.
extensive and then I see the trend with where other coaches get older they start adding in a lot more stuff that's like yeah for 40-year-old guys that's really
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
but for these 18 to 22-year-old kids like you can really roll right through and you can push these guys past their limits
Hmm.
and make sure that they improve so now the question I have for you is when guys don't really understand that. They don't train super hard. They're not really necessarily bought into it. What does that process look like for you? How do you get them to the other side so that they kind of fit in with the group and they train hard?
Man, it's to, to be honest, it's a rare occasion. Just from a standpoint of um, what I build in the weight room amongst everybody. Um, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that athlete
Oh yeah,
that,
you stick
yeah,
out.
no, seriously. You don't want to be that person that doesn't want to do this exercise because of whatever reason they have, or they don't want to add an extra 5 pound pulley to the bar, and again, like that just goes back to what we cultivated here in a sense of like, oh, so and so's doing it, I'll do it, and then to be honest, I don't even have to police it because the Canadian that's in there yelling about this game right now, like he's being like, no, bro, you can do more. You can do more. Like you could add that right. Like and again, we also
Yep.
we can use the velocity stuff to track it. Like let's push. Like but if you're not there, you're not there. It is what it is. But the level of trust I have with my guys is that I know they're going to give everything they got. And if it's not up to par, up to standard what we need, then I got to do my job and be able to daily periodize. And meet them where they're at. All
Yep.
right, DJ. So yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because if you set the foundation, everybody just falls in line typically.
yeah,
Like they understand, okay, this is the environment that I'm coming into. Like if everybody's already training hard and I come in as a freshman, come in as a transfer, I got to train hard
hmm
too, or else, like you said, I'm the one who sticks out and it's awkward.
hmm
You know,
yeah. No, that's it's
no,
it's crazy because and I don't get me wrong. I've always trained hard. Like I've always trained my athletes hard. You can go back to Tennessee State, to Elon, wherever. And I think that they'll all tell you like, man, like those workouts we did with you, like those are some of the toughest things we've ever done. But at the same time, I also know when to pull back. Um, and it's just like I said, it's a daily periodization thing. You got to have a pulse on your team, and that's why I do build the relationships I do because like when our program has issues or when our players have issues, the head coach comes to me first. Like
yep,
I'm
100%.
expected to be the one to have the pulse and where these guys are at, every one of them. um, and that's something that I enjoy, and that's something I take pride in. But you got to know when when to throttle back and when to hammer down. You know.
Absolutely, and it's a finesseful
Yeah.
deal, right? Because you got to know when the times are to push through, and then when are the times okay. These guys really actually do need a break today, and we can pull back just a little bit on the training.
Yeah.
What I love though is that you clearly aren't faking it about the relationships, because we've had about 7 guys stop by during this podcast just to say what's up to you and check
Yeah.
in
No,
with
it's
you.
yeah, man. It's a close knit group here, man. It really is, and that's yeah. Like you probably heard the conversation, or like he's gonna call me later about something. Who knows? I don't. I mean, I'll
Yep,
deal with him.
and there
I'll
you
deal
go.
with it when he calls me.
But you, exactly, and you love it. You love the
Yeah.
process, and you love being here. So it's a
Yeah.
non-issue. That's awesome. Well, Ty, thank you so much for coming on, man. I thought it was fantastic. I think it's really some really valuable information for coaches listening in, and I'm sure everybody who's listening. So yeah, I know Ty Watson already, so they'll hit you up, and this will be one of the podcasts where you see the stories being reposted
Oh
over and
God.
over and over again, because every single human being in the strength and conditioning
Yeah.
world. But thank you for coming
No,
on, man.
Coach, I really appreciate it. It was good to get to talk to you and kind of and put it more on a more formal level, I guess, than what mine and your conversations usually are. But I really enjoy.
I was about to say, I don't know who this guy is. Like you're talking to me, you're talking about sphere of strength and
Uh,
everything. I'm like, you never talked to me about this
oh man,
before.
yeah, no. It's end of the day, man. We're still human beings too, and we don't got to be on
Oh
all
yeah,
the time as far as the X's and O's of sports performance. But man, no, I really enjoyed it, and hope people get a little bit of a taste of what we do and an insight to what I'm about and who I am as a coach. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
absolutely. I think they got a very clear look. So we appreciate you.
Thanks.